You just got to use the teachable moment and show kids that there's something outside that's worth knowing. When they get older, these might be the kids who like biology, but they didn't like physics. These are the kids who might like geology and they didn't like chemistry. We have to give them a view of how big the world is.
I don't know if you have kids like this, but sometimes our kids don't like to play outside. Sometimes it's just too hot, or there are bugs, or there's different sensory things that they don't really care for. Is it always important for us to push our kids to go and play outside? Sometimes that idea can really lead some of us as parents to dark places. But today on the Celebrate Kids podcast, in this daily segment, Facing the Dark, Dr. Kathy goes in and helps us understand a little bit of why it's helpful for us to get our kids outside. And what do we do when kids don't really want to? Let's turn now to Dr. Kathy Cook.
Don't be afraid of the dark. Be careful with stars. Not every light is gonna guide you, baby. Not every light is gonna guide you.
So, Dr. Kathy, a long-term study shows that teenagers who maintain or increase physical activity levels are less likely to develop symptoms of depression. Researchers have tracked about 873 participants from the ages of 6 to 18, measuring activity levels with accelerometers and assessing mental health through clinical interviews. The strongest protective effect emerged when children ages 14 to 18 where higher physical activity, especially intense activity, correlated with fewer depressive symptoms. Notably, teens with higher depression symptoms from the ages of 10 to 16 became less active over time, suggesting a two-way relationship between physical health and mental well-being. Now, Dr. Kathy, I want to know a little bit from you. What do you think of this survey, the study? What are your thoughts here as you kind of read or hear these reports?
Well, I'm not surprised, first of all, that there's a relationship between physical activity and um, fewer symptoms of depression. Not surprised. I work out in a gym and I love it. I went to the gym 17 years ago thinking I would just work out before my knee replacement surgery. And I can't not go. And it's hard for me. Like this week, I only get to go one day. And why do I go? Because of the endorphins. Physical activity releases the endorphins, which are natural pain relievers and mood boosters. And there are times when I'll be in the gym working out and I feel no pain, but getting home, I feel the pain because when I was in the gym doing the lifting and doing the whatever that my trainer wanted me to do, I had those natural pain relievers and mood boosters. That's one of the reasons I go. It's fun. I love my trainer and I do enjoy the activity. I don't go just for fitness. I go for mental well-being and it does energize me in a surprising kind of a way. And Wayne, I was even thinking about being on the road. For instance, as the day that we're recording this, I leave the following day for the largest convention of the year, actually. There will be quite a bit of walking and quite a bit of standing required. And so I'll have the endorphins running because they're the mood boosters, pain relievers, praise God. I'm in the call, I'm in the will of God doing that, and I love it all. And then I get home. And because you've been working with me for a long time, that sometimes the day I get home, the next day is very difficult physically. That's when I begin to feel the effect of my shoulder tear and, my bad back. I didn't feel it as much on the road, but I feel it when I'm home. Why? Because I'm sitting around. And then if I'm not careful, the depressed state can enter in. I know enough now to know what's going on, so I don't get worried as much as I used to. You're very gracious to still allow me to talk on the phone, and then you'll help me understand, what's going on there. So again, not surprised. And I think a lot of us do physical activity with others. And so we also have that rush of the joy of having people who challenge us and we challenge them, who can jump the highest, run the fastest, whatever. I think this is not surprising and really important information.
Dr. Kathy, with a lot of that, when most of us were active kind of physically growing up, it revolved around some level of competition, right? It was the foot race in grade school, or it was, basketball in junior high and football in high school. And we did weightlifting and weight training, and all the things that you kind of talk about with your physical activity are things that for most of us, if we were in competitive sports growing up, it was kind of the thing. We did that to become stronger, better in competitive sports. And I just see across the nation a little bit this decrease in the opportunity for all kids to be a part of athletics. PE classes are kind of, I think, a thing of the past. They're not really, as celebrated. There's no, presidential fitness awards anymore that would really drive us to have some competition or have everyone kind of push to participate in different physical activity inside of school. And now with the decrease of really organized sports. I think that happens because we've really made it about, I would say, kind of elite sports, and many people are only on the team if they're really good because their school's so large, or because other people need to play, and so a lot of kids don't get that opportunity, and it kind of pushes some to the wayside, a little bit to the sidelines. Do we idolize success too much in physical activity? Is there something more to kind of having fun than necessarily what organized sports and competitive sports can give us inside of being physical and being active? What are your thoughts there on that?
Very good, very interesting. There's a place for both. Certainly, kids who are drawn to athletics, kids who are naturally body smart, who are coordinated physically and enjoy that. Let's give them a place to shine. I agree that the elite sports and the travel leagues have really cut into our middle school, high school teams. It's harder for, I think, an average kid to make a team now because so many of our students have elite experiences and even private coaches. And there's nothing wrong with that, except are they so focused as a young person that they won't ever be a generalist, which is actually a benefit, and that would be a whole nother broadcast to talk about that. But I think, what I would want would be for kids who want to play to have a chance to play. My niece is a, coach and an athletic director at a very, very fine Christian high school in the Atlanta area, and, she is stressed. She loves the tryout week because she's curious about who's gonna come and who's been working hard and who's prepared. Oh, it's stressful for her to not take a kid. She has a very good volleyball team, and they all wanna play. And they don't all wanna play, but a lot wanna play, and she can't choose them all. And that's stressful. I think then does she try to get the kids who don't make the team how does she keep them interested so that they'll want to play club ball or fun ball, still play at the church picnic, if you will, and build some experiences and some skills so that they can maybe make the team the next year? Does she recruit them to be a scorekeeper, to be a line judge at a tournament that her school hosts? How do we keep them engaged and interested? I think it's important. When I was a high school, I was a somewhat competitive athlete. When I went to the university, I was the athletic director for my dorm. I was a part of an 8-story, women's dorm, and then the cafeteria, and then the other side, an 8-story guys' dorm, and I was the athletic director for the women's 8 stories. You can imagine how many students that was, and I got to arrange, the sign up is here, and we're gonna use the northeast gym of this building and, yada, yada, and I loved it. I have an organizational skill, so I wasn't gonna compete anymore, but I enjoyed taking my love of athletics and the physical fitness part of it and helping others find a place where they could be, and then we would have so much fun playing volleyball and basketball, and it wasn't competitive. It was just, Harrison B against, this dorm over here, and it was fun, and I was surprised that it was fun. It didn't matter if you won. It was fun to be together, and it was fun to still be physically active. I wonder if not everybody knows that.
Dr. Kathy, I love that. There's so many stories, even from my upbringing and even deeper into the history of the school that my kids go to, where the first sports program was actually a female sports program because one of the teachers said, we just need to do more things. So they organized girls' sports and had Cracker Jacks and popcorn that they sold so they could buy bases and balls and bats. And this is in the 1916s. Like, it was just
Whoa.
super fun, and I love that whole kind of concept and idea because I think that activity, and I just see it in my own life. It's not just because of the studies. I see that when I'm physically active, I do feel better, but also when spring comes and summer comes in Minnesota, my kids feel better. They just do. Why is activity such a marker for mental health, especially physical activity being a marker for good mental health?
Yeah, part of it is that endorphins we were talking about, but, the other thing that I think of is that we're off our devices. Right? So we've talked here on the podcast before about how if we fall into our devices and we isolate and we're into the likes and the competition and, the quick pace and it's all fun and entertaining, that the rest of life looks, quite boring and stressful to us. So what's really cool about being outside is we're not on our devices. Now you can sit under a tree with a device. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about going for a walk and kicking the can and, shooting a basketball and playing catch with your dad and um being outside, the vitamin D from the sun, we know that that's critically important. I think we relate. We've got the big power, the body smart, big motor motion. We relate differently to each other. Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons.
Dr. Kathy, some kids, like you kind of alluded to, they might be on a device outside because they really don't like being outside. And I would say even some kids don't like nature, especially when we look at like the springtime and all of a sudden allergies come up and it just kind of isn't fun. It's not enjoyable. How do we maybe awaken those kids to have those smarts maybe flourish or blossom inside of them? How do we awaken the smarts of like body smart and even like nature smart inside of our kids?
Yeah, I appreciate that question, because if we don't spend a lot of time outside, we don't think we'll like it. You're very good, Wayne, at even reminded me that if I haven't had experience, of course, I'm gonna have a negative perspective on something, and you say it with great kindness usually, and there's always laughter because you know what you're doing, and it's so much fun. Yeah, so let's get them outside, and we can do small motor things outside. We can, play hopscotch, which is very different from playing football, as an example. Or again, we can sit on a park bench and we can enjoy the nature. Now, I live where the wildflowers are blooming and the allergies are ridiculous, and like I don't even open my door. Like today is just terrible weather, but on a day when it's beautiful here in Fort Worth, Texas, I won't open the door to have fresh air in my house because I don't want the allergens to come into my house, if you will. So I get that. But yeah, to be outside, to enjoy the fresh air, to go for walks, I think to do it with someone, to have a grandpa say, "Hey, let's go for a walk," for a grandma to garden with the kid in the garden, for a neighbor to say, "Hey, could I teach you about my vegetable garden?" Like maybe we haven't given kids a chance to find out the beauty of outside. Can we study caterpillars who become, you know, butterflies and moths, as an example? Today I woke up, there was so much rain here. We've had over an inch of rain and the worms are out. So if I were teaching second graders still today, we would do a lesson on worms tomorrow, no joke. And where do they come from? And how deep were they in the grass? And how long can they live on the cement? And is it true that you can cut them in half and both parts appear to live? Like, do they have a head on both parts? Like, what's up with that? Like, you just got to use the teachable moment and show kids that there's something outside that's worth knowing. When they get older, these might be the kids who like biology, but they didn't like physics. These are the kids who might like geology and they didn't like chemistry. We have to give them a view of how big the world is. And I think for the body smart too, it's body smart outside, it's swing set, it's slides, it's things like that. It's football with dad. But body smart is also building with Legos, and body smart is also knitting with grandma. Body smart is also, building a house of cards. If people still do that with the deck of cards and you try to lean them against each other and make them stand. All those things are also body smart. So we can awaken that. Cooking is body smart. Sewing with mom is body smart. Going into the workbench area and letting your son organize the screwdrivers and find out where you could hang the hammer so he can even reach it. Those would be body smart activities as well.
I love what Dr. Kathy had to say today. It reminds me of a passage that comes out of 1 Kings chapter 19, and I'll begin reading at verse 11. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord wasn't in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord wasn't in the fire. And then after that fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. And then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Elijah the prophet was really exhausted and discouraged at this time of his life. He was running for his life after confronting powerful adversaries. God led him outdoors to a mountain, teaching him a vital lesson about finding God's presence in quiet and stillness rather than sometimes the chaotic noise of the culture. Elijah's culture emphasized power and dramatic displays as signs of deity inside of a god. Yet on Mount Horeb, or Mount Sinai, God used the wilderness's silence and the subtlety to demonstrate his calming presence, reminding Elijah, and us really, that nature can bring clarity and peace and comfort amidst some of life's greatest turmoils. I think as parents, we can help our kids see how often nature speaks to us quietly, yet powerfully, how it shouts to the reality and the need for God in the world, but also how it subtly just exists with the confidence that God does work inside of nature. Taking your family outdoors and intentionally experiencing moments of silence or gentle observation, listening to birds, watching sunsets, or even quietly sitting underneath a tree, all those things can teach our kids that peace is often found in simplicity and stillness, especially in nature. I hope that's an encouragement for you, and I hope this whole podcast is an encouragement for you. On behalf of Dr. Kathy Cook, my name is Wayne Stender. We're so glad that you're listening to the Celebrate Kids podcast, this daily segment, Facing the Dark. We're looking forward to seeing you here again now tomorrow.